That said, with us on the line is Greg Palast, investigative reporter with BBC News and The Guardian, author of Billionaires and Ballot Bandits. His new film, Vultures and Vote Rustlers, is now available on DVD. His website, GregPalast, PALAST.com. You can tweet him at Greg_Palast. And Greg, welcome back.
Glad to be with you in the moment.
Indeed. It is always great to have you with us, Greg. I thought this headline was absolutely spectacular. Trump's Republican hitman who's stealing your vote. Tell us about this.
The hitman, Chris Kobach. Who is Chris Kobach? Well, first of all, by the way, he's the guy that gave Trump the idea that the Mexicans will pay for the wall. Okay. Really? And he is the Catherine Harris of 2016. His official title, Secretary of State of the state of Kansas. Now, but he's been wandering about our Americas. He is the character who wrote the law SB 1070 for Arizona, otherwise known as the driving while black law, which even right-wing justices found unconstitutional, racist, and just icky. So now he's got a new one. He's saying that we need to require anyone registering to vote to prove their citizenship, that you're a real American. Now, on the face of it, hey, Tom, that sounds good. Only Americans should be allowed to vote. Proving your citizenship, that's a whole other game. First of all, is anyone who's not a citizen voting? Do we have people, according to Trump and Kobach, we have people swimming the Rio Grande just to vote for Hillary. And yet, when the state of Florida went on a massive, expensive manhunt to find illegal alien voters, they tagged 181,000 Hispanics, threatened to remove their vote, and found only one illegal alien voter, an Austrian who registered as a Republican. That's
a white guy from Europe.
A white guy from Europe in Lederhosen. Now, I made that one up, but he's from Austria.
Yeah.
But no little mustache, though. Right. So they're coming. So he came up with this idea. You have to prove your citizenship. Problem, the United States law called the Motor Voter Act, passed under Bill Clinton's presidency, which says when you go in America, if you go get a driver's license, right on the driver's license form, you also have an opportunity to register to vote. You do have to state under penalty of going to prison that you are a citizen. When the Austrian broke that law, he got 10 years in the slammer. When he's out, he will be deported. It's not people who are not citizens don't tend to give their names and addresses and show up at polling stations for ICE to scoop them up. So we don't have this problem.
Did that Austrian actually vote, or did he just get a driver's license and check the wrong damn box?
No. He voted for Jeb Bush.
Oh, really? He was a Republican.
He admitted voting he just had to vote for Jeb Bush no matter what the cost. 10 years in the slammer.
Wow.
Boy, that's love. Even Jeb's mother doesn't love him that much.
Right.
So you don't have a problem. Okay, so why is he doing this? The answer is simple. Because it's hard to prove you're a citizenship, because America, unlike the Soviet Union or the old Soviet Union, does not have citizenship cards. Or unlike Nazi Germany, we don't have citizenship cards. Social Security cards, my foreign staff has them. Driver's license, foreigners can have to have a driver's license if you're driving in the U.S., even if you're not a citizen. And so that's not proof. The only thing that's proof is a naturalization paper or your original, emphasize, original birth certificate. Anyone listening know where their original birth certificate is? Or a passport. And you know how many poor voters of color have just returned from the Alps with their passport. Yeah. So let's face it.
I think it's like fewer than 5% of Americans have a passport, right? Fewer than 3% of Americans have ever traveled outside the United States. If you exclude Canada or Mexico, I mean, it's just amazing how Americans just don't do that by and large.
Well, if you, they've heard that if you step over the border, you get eaten by dragons and the earth falls off.
Or you might get free health care.
Yeah, right.
God forbid.
And get used to it, demand it. But what's happened here is that this is blocked in the state of Kansas. This is resulted in the suspension of 36,000 voters, almost all of them young voters of color who don't have those, who don't have those papers sitting around when they go in to register to vote. The problem is it violates federal law, because federal law says if you sign the motor voter form when you go get a license, you're registered. So what Kobach did is he said, well, that's okay if you're going to vote in a federal election, but you can't vote in a state election. So Kansas literally has an apartheid 2-ballot system. The richer white people all get federal and state ballots, but if you're a poor kid who's just registered to vote and you don't have your papers with you, you only get 1 ballot. They literally have a legally
just a federal election.
Yeah, and in a federal election. So now the ACLU and the League of Women Voters sued Kobach. Okay, they sued him saying that this is a violation of national law. It's impeding voters of color. It's clearly, we do have a little bit of something called the Voting Rights Act left. It violates the Voting Rights Act, the motor voter law, you name it. This guy's off the wall. Once again, just like SB 1070, it's racism parading as an attempt to stop voter fraud. And so his response, this is Secretary Kobach, is to fly to Washington and call the League of Women Voters the Communist League of Women Voters. Reporters couldn't believe it. Communist League of Women Voters? So he said, get that down, the Communist League of Women Voters and the Communist ACLU. And the Commie League and the Commie ACLU then ran into a problem because Kobach, one of his associates from Kansas, was put in charge, was made executive director of the U.S. Elections Assistance Commission. That's the commission that's supposed to keep an eye on shenanigans, voting shenanigans. Kobach put his man in at the EAC, and he agreed to start printing up 2 different registration forms, one for Americans and one for people who live in Kansas, Alabama, and Georgia. Alabama and Georgia, those bastions of civil rights, also adopted Kobach's prove your citizenship registration.
We only have a minute left, Greg. He also runs a 33-state database that is used to purge voters, doesn't he?
Oh my God!
I mean, he's in the state that the Koch brothers live in.
He's the guy who is in charge of something called interstate crosscheck. That's what I'm investigating right now for Rolling Stone, and we'll give you those reports.
Right.
What this guy, who has been stamped, his laws have been stamped racist now 3 times by federal courts. What Mr. Stamped Racist 3 times is going to come up with in a 33-state database, basically 33 states that are almost all of them Republican controlled. What's that about? I hear we have an election coming up in November, and that list is going to be the way they're going to try to secure it.
Yeah, it's going to be just like what Katherine Harris did with 60, 80,000 African Americans in Florida just before the 2000 election so that George W. Bush could get close enough to steal the election. Spot on. Greg Palast, you are brilliant. Keep up the great work, please. Great having you with us. Greg Palast. GregPalast.com is his website, and his new book his new film is available on DVD.